and brag about you. So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending and coming to the second session in the Kayak Conference. That's Kentucky Young Adult and Children's Services within public libraries. The bar has been set high, and I suspect Barbara's going to even move it higher. So, we have had already outstanding sessions, and of course, we're recording, so you're not missing a thing. So we have Dr. Barbara Hamilton with us right now, and she's an associate professor of middle and secondary ed over at Asbury. I had put out some emails earlier to different literacy specialists throughout the state and who I should harass to come and present to us. And Barbara was at the very top of the list, and she responded immediately. So the reason I asked her is we are asked and mandated for many of us to teach literacy, and we know the importance of literacy, but we don't always know the how-tos of how to teach literacy. That's not something we're ever taught in library schools or many library schools and or in other educational settings. So Barbara has graciously come to us. Her specialty is integrating literacy and technology and finding those points where they touch on each other and just really kind of explode opportunities for teaching and for speaking to students and our patrons in ways that may resonate with them. So she has so much to give to us, and I've been able to peek through the slides and giddy up, y'all. She's just great. So, Barbara, thank you so much for being here. We're so looking forward to your session. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put anything in the chat. I suspect, knowing Barbara, she's flexible also on just you taking over the mic and speaking with her. I hope I'm not being too presumptuous on that, but Barbara, not at all. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you just deeply, and I'm going to turn everything over to you. And thank you again.
Well, thank you, Amy, and thank you for this opportunity. Everyone, I'm really excited to be with you today. And like Amy said, I am a professor here at Asbury, getting to really enjoy teaching teachers. I never imagined this was not a plan I had in my mind. My home away from home is actually middle school, and that is really where the heart of this presentation began. It was in the 6th grade with young 11-year-olds, two gentlemen in particular, who began to challenge my notions of what literacy really was. So I'm really excited to be with you today. I am from Frankfort, Kentucky originally. The bookmobile from the Paul Sawyer Public Library would stop at my house in Frankfort, and it was the highlight of my time, my week. I just loved it. So thank you all so much for being here. And just as Amy said, you can turn on your mic and just ask a question. You can put it in the chat, and we'll kind of watch for that. But I want this to hopefully be beneficial to you. And I may speak to my experience and my research work with the classroom, but feel free to make the connections, and we'll hopefully leave some time at the end for you to think through the takeaways. Okay, so welcome. We're going to talk about how do you encourage literacy engagement through multimodal literacies. And I didn't really know even what multimodal literacies were until I began my doctoral work at Indiana University. And I just had some of the best professors there who really encouraged me. So my goal for our time today is to help you create access points for your patrons to engage in literacy, to encourage not only print-based reading, but to see there is a repertoire of multiliteracies, and to recognize, we're going to touch not on all of them, but just a few. How do these multimodal text types, whether that be an infographic, graphic novels, and all sorts of digital multimedia with games and videos, how can these opportunities expand what counts for literacy? A lot of times we just think it's reading and writing, and I was the writing teacher, so I am not at all trying to replace print-based reading or writing. In fact, I think you probably can see way too many books on my shelf behind me. So I just want us to think through how we make the pathways bigger and how we integrate that into our print-based libraries. So the other part I'm really excited to share with you is I've been doing this with my pre-service teachers for a while now. How do we actually select quality graphic novels? How do we come up with ideas for creating theme-based text sets to serve those who are in your community with what they're interested in? So, Amy, I'm going to ask, is it possible for you to play that little video? And if not, I can try to figure out how to do it.
I switched without coming on the mic first, so yes. Just a minute, I'll be back.
It's okay. It's okay. So this video is kind of going to show you a really good glimpse of multimodal literacies and multiliteracies before I tell you about it. How about I just show you?
I am having a hard time getting it. Why don't you press? Because I think it's going to work for you. Because
Right. So if I just
I
press the link,
it should work.
okay. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys? No. Okay, let me see.
Let me do something different.
And it's okay if it doesn't work. Okay, thanks for letting me know, you guys. I tried to read about it.
Nope, I had it and it's not.
It's all right. It's all right. Well, if I could,
Let me mess a little and I'll go ahead.
It's okay. It's okay. So let me just skip ahead then, and if we get it to work, great. And if not, I'll share the link with you. It'll only be available for a little bit because it's part of it, so you can watch it. Okay. Well, would you guys mind if you click the link in the chat? It's really long in the chat. Would you guys take just, I think it's 2 minutes. Would you take a moment and just watch these two cute little 11-year-olds? And I'll let it play so that I know when you might be finished. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I just got it to work.
It's all right. It's all right.
It's like, well, you wanted it interactive.
That's right. That's right. It's all right. We're learning to use our technology too. It's okay.
It is, yeah, nope. There have been quite a few kerfuffles today for whatever reason. It's kind of funny.
You know, this was really simple. I've never used Collaborate. This was other than that not working. It's beautiful. So
No,
thank you.
and it was, I had something locked. It was on my end that I messed it up after being confident I could help you.
It's all right. I couldn't help myself. So thank you. I've presented before where there's a moderator, but not a tech, no
Ah,
tech help. So this is a bonus.
yeah, I've been helping a lot. Oh, they're coming back. There you go.
Perfect, perfect. Okay, friends. Well, I hope you enjoyed. Kim said the Here Have a Bite was so cute. It was. Look at how connected to their audience they were. What are some other highlights? And you can turn your mic on and tell me, or you can type it in the chat. What was something you noticed? And then I'll tell you where we're headed with this. Anything else that jumped out to you? One of my favorite moments is when they lean in to crunch the cookies. And in the original one, I've had to um, record it a couple times. It was so funny because that very first one you could hear them crunching. So it was very descriptive. It helped us get to descriptive writing. Well, I'll keep monitoring hopefully the chat here and yeah, infinite of this versus infinite of that. Yes, they did use vocabulary words that I might not have ever gotten in a paper. That is true. So remember, I was the writing teacher. And you all, I was about to start an argumentative unit, and I was in the Kroger just pondering, shopping for my own family. And I was thinking, what am I going to do to make this meaningful? And that's really the heart of literacy, isn't it? We want meaningful connections. If our students don't make meaning, then they could decode the words all they want, they can get excited about the pictures. But if they're not making those meaningful connections, it's really lost in translation. So I was looking for a way to make this meaningful to hook them, and I came across these Swedish fish Oreos, and I brought them into my class, and it really went from there. And I would just keep the package closed. I just probably talked it up for a couple weeks, and we were going to do a challenge together. I had them imagine because I thought, what's better for 11-year-olds, cookies and candy smushed together in an Oreo. And I really did. If you heard, my favorite part of the video is also when they say, our teacher says this is bad. And that was me. I was like, I don't think so. And they had to rate it, like they said, on a scale of 1 to 10. So one day I was at my desk pushing papers as we do. And one of those young men came in and said, Miss Hamilton, we did the cookie challenge. My mom bought them for me. And we did it and we put it on our YouTube channel. And I looked up and I said, what? You have a YouTube channel? You guys, this was like 12 years ago. So I'm happy to tell you one of those young men is a freshman here at Asbury this year. So it wouldn't quite be 12 years ago, would it be? It'd be more like 8 years ago. So it's pretty amazing to see your former students grow up, just like I'm sure you have patrons who grow up in front of you. But I started to ask myself, because that video was so dynamic, it was so descriptive. Again, those young men knew their audience. They had a purpose. They supported their claims. They could give me, I think it was a 7.5. They were very precise in their ratings. They even did outtakes with the mom, and they had a call to action at the end. They said, like, subscribe. So I started to ask myself questions. What could I do to transform the way I was approaching the writing so that I could tap into these dynamic forms of literacy? Were there already openings or on ramps already in place in their lives, things that they loved, like a YouTube channel? They already had that. So they were already hosting. And what print and digital modes did the students prefer that could extend or scaffold and challenge everyone? So as you saw, they did a lot. They were nominal students at best. So I knew that asking them to write a 5-paragraph essay, which we still did, was something we were going to do. But if I started to question, what if I'm approaching this all wrong? Because you can imagine the groans that I heard when we started looking at a 5-paragraph essay in a unit. I had a grad student a few months ago say, so what did you do? Did you let them transform their, have a transcript of their video? And I just said, I wish I'd been that smart. I really didn't. I asked them for permission to share it with the other classes. We enjoyed it. We still did the cookie challenge everywhere. And then I opened up the packet and we still taught the argumentative unit, all about, whether cell phones should be allowed in school or whatever the prompt was at the time. So it just stuck with me as I began my work here at Asbury and my doctoral work. There was something going on there. And you've probably read this by now, this slide. Multimodal literacies were brand new to me, but different ways that we express ourselves using different forms of media. And typically, the multimodal part just means we combine two or more modes, which is what we're doing right here. You see me, you see my slides, you hear me, and you guys are getting to chat or turn on your own mic. You've watched a video. So, all those things build. And I'm sure you've noticed our students today, our children, your patrons, are so entangled in their digital literacies use that it's hard to separate it from much of our lives. So we have to now think in terms of all these different platforms of communication, which is really exciting because it does allow us to look and be able to expand who we're reaching and really reach out to culturally diverse students, patrons, and the social contexts that are around us. I'm sorry this is a little blurry, but I did want to just show you. This is a good graphic. Back to infographics. Visuals always help me. They help our students as well. So multimodal literacy really encompasses all. It's not that we're taking away from print-based. We're not really replacing print-based literacies. We're simply expanding what counts. And you can see students are doing all sorts of things. And when it comes to writing, I was really challenged. And even in Kentucky, the academic standards have been updated in, I believe it was 2019. They're no longer called writing standards, they're called composition standards because we have students who are composing digitally with their fingers, typing, as well as handwriting. So, what are some resources we want to tap into or think about? Today, we're going to talk about linguistic modes, visual, spatial, gestural, as you see me counting on my hand. And as you see those young men, they were very dynamic. I mean, they were moving into the screen, they were moving out. I don't know if you saw, there was a little brother who photobombed at one point. And then, of course, the audio. So, there's all different ways that we want to tap into these literacies. I also want to clarify that when I say literacies, there's a reason I do that because we often think of it as singular when actually it's plural. There are so many new and different ways of making meaning, as you know, digitally sharing meaning about our world. So it is in the plural and it's new because it's dynamic, it's constantly changing. And we can kind of get dizzy trying to keep up with all the technology. So I'm going to give you some tips that I have for that before we leave today. I also want to preface, we always want to talk about as literacy teachers, you may have been to a conference or a session before where you learn all these great technology tools. I really appreciate the National Council for the Teachers of English. In 2018, they came out with a position statement that said, we want it to be literacies before technologies. Because a lot of times we get so busy with the technology tools that we again forget this is all for meaning making. So we want to understand that meaning making extends beyond the written word. And again, we've got practices we want to include our students in. A big component of our schoolwork and instruction these days that librarians I know are such a resource for would be what we call UDL, the Universal Design for Learning. And so this just means that if it's good for one student, I have a colleague who says, if it's good for one of your students, it's good for all of them. And that's really true. So UDL offers us a more flexible toolkit. And all of these ways that I'm sharing with you today would allow a student to, again, be included. They wouldn't be left out if they were a struggling or a striving, I like to call them, reader. If they're a striving print-based reader, it just means we've got to scaffold and find another way in. I also want to start by saying too, these multimodal literacies and resources help us combat deficit views. When we look at our students and we only see their need, we miss all of their strengths. So a multimodal literacies pedagogy makes room for us to value that we've got patrons and students coming who have all kinds of interests and strengths. We just may not see them because we're focused on this dominant way of doing literacy, which is, again, usually print-based reading and writing. So it also allows us to tap into what research calls funds of knowledge. Just again, this resource, a deep well of what students bring with them. If you think about it like a backpack, they bring a backpack filled with stuff to help them learn and make meaning. We just don't always count it in our classrooms. And so thank you. I just want to say thank you to all of you across the state for, just again, investing in their toolkit, investing in their backpack, and allowing us to see the strengths that these students bring. Had it not been for the librarian on the bookmobile for me, I was a reader still, but you all know you play an invaluable role beyond what my home could have done. And I came from a pretty turbulent home. So I got to go to the library at times with my mom. But the fact that the bookmobile stopped in front of my house um, was a strength. It was such an asset and a resource. So thank you. As you know, there are many stressors on adolescents these days for the literacy knowledge, and that's across the board post-COVID. But I really thought this was a helpful infographic. A lot of times, what do our students or patrons bring to the reading experience? There's just so much. Um, so sometimes it's that they want to read the Harry Potter book, and I would have sixth graders who would carry around their Harry Potter book, but they really weren't reading it. So I was so thankful when Brian Selznick came out with the invention of Hugo Cabret, because it was a really thick, like a Harry Potter book. But if you know, that book has pictures. I have it over here on the shelf. I think it has pictures and it has different volume, different amount of words on each page. That's a multimodal book. And any picture book is really multimodal. So as they get older, the texts get more complex, it gets difficult. A lot of our English learners, multilingual learners coming to us, they don't necessarily have the background knowledge they need. And then this is a big one we fight in the intermediate and middle level grades is motivation. What interests them? And if it's not interesting to them, we have a hard time. So with my pre-service teachers, I'm going to speed up here a little bit. I introduced what I call a text set project, and I used this quad text set framework. We did way more than 4, but I wanted to just get you thinking about how to make sets of multimodal text types. That's really what the project is about. So it considers the reading volume, the text complexity, how interested would they be in it. We pick a target or an anchor text. Sometimes that's the hardest one in the series, and sometimes it's the mid-level one. And we think through how do we create again access points or entrance to really easy infographics or more simple, and we want to build the text set from simple to complex. So there's lots of advantages to that. So I just told you about the project. It's a collection of resources. We use different genres, different medias, and they have to come up with all different things. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. So first of all, they choose the text that they think will be challenging or that will interest. Then we choose a hook. That could be a book trailer. When I taught Wonder by R.J. Palacio, I would also show a student-made book trailer. I would also read it aloud. Now there's, a movie about it. We didn't have that when I was reading it aloud to students. And then they all wanted to read it. They were very interested. So we then choose other motivating text to garner interest. Typically, I would choose some articles, and I would take that right into how to be a good friend. How to stand up to a bully. And so you can see we would just create text sets again to support students' background knowledge. So the main thing we want to do, and this is all based off of Tim Shanahan, who is a primary literacy researcher, we want to think about what is it that the age of the patron or the age of a student, what are the demands that will be placed on that student to know the language and the knowledge? What are your goals for them? In public school, of course, we have to align those to curriculums standards. And I know you don't have to do that, I don't think, in the library, but I'd encourage you to be aware of what those students are doing. I know our Jessamine County Public Library also would have the summer reading or the KBA Book Award winners, that those would be the summer reading list. So any ways you can provide those resources for teachers, that's another way to encourage those partnerships. And then we want to think about all different types of text types: visual, videos, informative, fiction, and how accessible are they? All the different genres and all the pop culture things that you know your kids are interested in, like Swedish Fish Oreos. So I wanted to just touch on, we also have a shift happening in our literacy instruction, and this was pre-COVID. But when I was in school and getting ready to be a teacher, we learned all about general content area reading. It was a really generalized approach to reading strategies to implement across the curriculum. We've really shifted in the last decade to think through disciplinary literacy. So we're not just applying, we still apply general strategies, but we're also thinking a historian reads differently than a scientist, reads very differently than a mathematician. So our pre-service teachers honestly have the most fun with this part of the project. They come into the class thinking, I'm not a reading teacher. Why do I need this class? And they get in the middle of it and they're like, oh my gosh, look at all the fun I can have with my students. And they get to do it in the content area that they love. That's why they're science secondary education majors, because they love it. So there's a way a scientist reads, like they're asking questions and hypothesizing, all sorts of things, very different. So we focus on different language, different academic demands. And you can see here, even with history, we would be sourcing, generating a claim, justifying our claim. So yeah, everything I've just said, it teaches a specific, specialized way of reading. And I know this is a little blurry right here, but this was a good visual, I thought, of a historian puts on different lenses than a geographer does. Okay, so that's just one example. We read with different questions in mind. And with the standards, the students are getting more complex texts at younger grades. And they need us, they need you as librarians to help them think aloud, to help them see with those lenses of how am I going to read as an explorer, as a geographer? How am I going to read as a mathematician? So another what I would encourage you all, if you do, I think you'll be able to have access to the slides, but I would encourage you to look up Gene Yang. I'm not going to show his TED Talk here, but he is the author of American Born Chinese and lots of other award-winning graphic novels. And he tells a very funny story about his life as a teacher and how he found out his students enjoyed his comic lessons. He would write out his math lessons in comic strips and cartoons, and they preferred the cartoons to him being there in person. So it's really funny, and it talks about the evolution of comic books and graphic novels and how we really help that text type actually support us in disciplinary literacy. And you might not think that that's possible. Actually, I think as librarians, you probably think it's more possible than teachers do at times, but there's all kinds of sophisticated ways that students are actually reading when they look at a graphic novel. And what is it? It's actually a book that tells a stellar story that words and pictures can't really do alone, or text can't do alone. They're augmenting the story. Back to Brian Selznick and the invention of Hugo Cabret. That's a good example of how it does that. So key features of a really quality graphic novel: it's going to still have a beginning, middle, and end. It'll have a main character, but it's also going to, again, have interpretations of that text in pictures. It also can support our youngest emergent readers and writers with learning. It can support our students who have learning, or patrons with learning disabilities. It also is wonderful for our multilingual patrons because it, again, supports them in their in-school literacies, because they're using that repertoire of language, their native language or their mother tongue, as Amy Tan calls it, in order to be able to use these multiple modalities to make meaning, even as they're learning English or they're learning to decode. Graphic novels are actually inviting students to decode and make meaning with words as well as pictures, which really is what their digital lives are doing right now. If they're on Instagram or TikTok, they are doing that right now. They're making meaning. And so when we get to school, how do we again allow there to be on ramps? Or when they get to the library, how do we connect and build bridges between these dynamic literacies they're used to, so that they want to open the print-based books? Excuse me. Yeah, so the benefits of quality graphic novels, as one example of a text type, they promote diversity, higher order thinking. They actually, these days, can give us realistic connections to the world around us. It's amazing. All that the graphic novel genre, I feel like, has just exploded. And the research shows, if you do get to watch Gene Yang's TED Talk, that I believe it was school librarians, the graphic novels are what get checked out the most when students come and get to pick for themselves. So it reinforces concepts, it provides visuals to support them. Reluctant readers also respond to them because it builds that self-efficacy, that belief in themselves that they can do this, and that they're good at it, that they have confidence in making meaning. They get to use the pictures, not just the words, to understand meaning. It's really a safe, non-threatening way to get students excited. Again, our point is not just a graphic novel, but it is a great simple text to ease them into the more challenging text. So how do we evaluate them? Does it have a sensible story? Is the story accessible? Is it developmentally appropriate? Are there curriculum connections? And we're going to talk about a couple of those. And then you can look at additional features that come depending on the genre. This is from Paula Griffith. So again, the pre-service teachers choose some graphic novels. They take it through the 7 questions you see here. And I had a couple of science students a few years ago. They were like, Prof. Hamilton, this this science book right here isn't even accurate. So it really matters that we're able to help our students and our pre-service teachers decide what is appropriate and what is quality or not. So you can see this one is for a fiction, what kind of characters, what kind of themes are developed, because these all tie into the standards, and they can again give us an on-ramp for getting into more books. So you can see here we've got criteria for nonfiction, especially those infographics and charts. Sometimes on our tests, even for K-Prep, they've got to read a chart. So it matters that we're doing that with each other. So I'm going to just skip through. You guys can read through these again. We want to make sure we've got the right lexile levels, readability, it's age appropriate. And how can we, again, use these graphic novels in our classrooms? How can you as a librarian even encourage the teachers in your area to recognize that graphic novels are a quality genre that can be used? I think that's the most exciting part for me today, talking with you, is just to say thank you. Thank you again for resourcing what teachers are doing today. So it helps us facilitate a better understanding of complex text. They can extend the analysis of the classic literature. One of my English education students was so excited to find a graphic novel of Beowulf. He was going to use it with his high school students because the language, as you know, is ancient and is challenging. And in his text set, still had Beowulf. They were still going to read it, the epic poem that it is, but he started with the graphic novel. And then he found an amazing video about it. So these were all things he used, again, to extend the literacies and expand what we were doing. You guys are probably aware of March, and there's a trilogy of these by Congressman John Lewis. My history majors especially love to incorporate this graphic novel. There are so many ways you can use it to teach in history and teach content. In fact, one of the last iterations of this course I taught, at first, I take my students through graphic novels and really just present it to them, and they were saying, "There's no way. I mean, I love this, but I would never use it in my classroom." By the end of the semester, they were like, "Oh, I see now how this actually gives my students access to more complex texts." This is one example of what a quad text set could look like for English language arts. It could be a visual of watching Finding Your Roots, and which one of my favorite shows on PBS with Henry Louis Gates. And then it was just informational text, informational articles. We use platforms like News ELA. And sorry, I'm drawing a blank right now of the other one I love to use. Maybe Wonderopolis for younger elementary students. All of those offer many accessible ways for students to read about informational texts. And then the target text for this one was To Kill a Mockingbird. And then again, they went for more accessible texts with this young adult nonfiction, and back to target text part 2. So that's just one example of what a quad text set could look like. We already talked about this. Thank you, Amy, for adding that in. I think News ELA is all one word, and it may be a subscription. It used to be free. Um, while I'm waiting on this slide to load, do you all have any questions or anything you're excited about or you already do at your library with graphic novels? Love it. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep on talking. You guys feel free to interject or add it to the chat. This is one example. Yes, well, that's encouraging, Karen, because that would be what Jean Yang said too. So again, this is a gift to teachers to understand that actually can help a student access the higher order thinking text. So what you see here is a Padlet board. I love using Padlet. And this was a way that our students collected resources for their text set. You can see she's got her Kentucky Academic Standards here. She has different videos of order of operation. She has acronyms. She also has a poem or poetry. And then she has books and articles in here. And all of this helped her unit. So really quickly, I'm going to fly through. You probably already know about these. She's no longer here with us, which makes me incredibly sad. But Katrina Sally was our education librarian, and she used to come in and do this with me, but we would use teaching books. It is wonderful for finding, again, all kinds of resources. And you have access to these slides, so you can see the ways you could use teaching books. Novelist Plus, I think all of you have that. I'll say your schools, local schools, your teachers probably don't know that you offer this resource for them. So I would encourage you, yes, I would encourage you to reach out and let the schools or the literacy teachers at least know. It is such a resource that our pre-service teachers didn't know about. Most of their cooperating teachers didn't, and they are able to have it while they're at the university. But when they leave, it's you all that help support them in that. So again, just wonderful resources. Later, you can click on these. These are through our, some of these are through our King Curriculum Lab, but our librarian, Katrina Sally, had kind of gone through and pulled out children's books by content area. Then here's just a list of all kinds, and I'm sorry, I totally forgot, Amy, but Wonderopolis, News ELA are also on this site. So this is a way to encourage short bursts of articles. Some of them have assistive technologies in them. They read to them. How do we incorporate gaming? And I'm going to show you one example of that. Again, websites by content areas just to help you. This is how did we prioritize, again, students using multimodal literacy. So when I first did this assignment, I just had them make a list, handwrite it, or they made a Word document. And then I realized, wait a minute, the very thing I'm asking them to do with this project, I'm not actually doing. So that's how I chose to go to Padlet and use it. I would encourage you to check out Padlet. It might be a really fun way for you to put all the information or your text around a theme, and students could walk in and then they could click on it. So that's kind of the fun of it. Another way that you can use Padlet is, you can see I had another student who started to draw connections and make the connections from you're going to start here and then you're going to go to this one. This science example was even more explicit, and this allowed me to know the connections that this student was making, which was really, really fun. Here's another example of how this student just used color. She color coded traditional print books, videos, and then photographs and articles for history. And then this is an example of a game. If you guys have ever heard of PhET, PhET, it's a simulation of science. So you guys, this was the most fun thing. She was allowing us to use gravity or not to do the phases of the moon, and it created a simulation. So just imagine if you had a computer or a way for a student to access a simulation that you already had set up, and then you have all the books that and the articles that go with this science topic. So other popular multimodal literacies you can see here that are way beyond what I've showed you today, but in pop culture. And I end today with, this was right after post-COVID, the school bus was running. This was my way home. This is my drive home on this very narrow country lane. There's no lanes. There's really no shoulder. And sometimes we think about literacy that way. We just think in this one direction, right? We need to realize there's a whole highway. So if you've ever driven through Atlanta, you know there's lots of lanes. So I want to encourage you to keep building the lanes and expanding the literacy. And then the last one, if you've ever been to Dallas, it's not just multiple lanes, right? It's stacked bridges. So that's just one way that I like to end by saying multimodal literacies are so resourceful for you and for teachers, for your patrons, and for students today. So thanks for being here with me. You're welcome to scan this little QR code. Just tell me a takeaway that you had or ways I'm always looking to improve the session or support you. You can ask me questions on that form. But thank you. Thank you so very much to Amy and to KYA. I really appreciate it. And I've left maybe all of 2 minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or just turn your mic on.
Well, that was just, thank you. It was just great. Her slides will be available afterwards. We'll have them uploaded as well once we get the recordings out to you. So don't worry, you won't miss things. Worst case scenario, just email me and I can hook you up with information. And I know just Barbara's always, well, she just has been so open and generous with her time. Like I said, I don't think I'm too presumptuous in saying she's easily contactable. There is a question in the chat for you.
Yes, Ashley, there are lots of published stories about them, and my dissertation work was all about multimodal literacies. So I will try to, if you want to put your email in the chat, I'm happy to email you some links to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
That was fast.
Carroll County, I know right where that is.
Other questions?
All right.
Feel free to steal the mic if that's easier for you.
Yeah.
It's nice to have support for what we see going off the shelves, that it's not just, because it's easier, which is some of the arguments we hear that reading graphic novels is not true literacy, it's cheating. Some of the similar conversations we have surrounding audiobooks, or
Yes.
when it's not that visual text or the book format that we have in front of us. So it's lovely to have responses too for concerned parents and patrons coming in wanting to learn more and just genuinely asking questions. So thank you so much for that. Barbara, we just appreciated everything. Well, I've appreciated it, and people are putting thank you. So everyone's appreciated this. Thank you for sharing your time and your wisdom and knowledge with us. This is just really a gift you've given us, and thank you for doing that. There may be some more questions. If you just hang on a teeny tiny bit, that would be
I
great.
absolutely will. I will. Thank you all again. Thank you for the work you do. Amy, thanks for inviting me. It's my honor. And again, you all are you are resourcing really schools and teachers and families. And so just thank you for the work you do.
Yeah. And as you guys process this, if you come up with some brainstorms, please include me in them because I'd love to foster or create some new partnership or meeting opportunities where we bring different groups together. If you're interested in continuing this dialogue and learning more, we can go down that rabbit trail. I'm happy to help, and I'll do my best to suck others in as well. We'd like to thank KDLA just for this opportunity of hosting our kayak conference, and for IMLS for giving us the funding to be able to support library services all across actually the nation and territories, but specifically in Kentucky. Barbara, thank you yet again. We really
Thank
appreciate you and all that you've given us. We hope that you have a good rest of your day and you can take a
you.
big sigh of relief that this portion is over.
Thanks, Amy. I really appreciate it.
All right, all. We'll be back again. We're headed to lunch now, and in this room, we'll be back at 1 o'clock with fostering inclusivity and wellness. And it's essentially using 3D printing to help us serve our patrons in a superior way. Room 2 has early literacy and speech development and story times and how to accommodate speech delays. And room 3 has every child ready to read, 5 practices in story time. Perhaps that will give you some ideas or support for that which you do. So have a great lunch or whatever you need to do, and we'll see you back at 1 o'clock Eastern and at noon at Central Time. Take care.